Vision. The meeting is open to the public, and the public is invited to attend in person. All persons wishing to attend the meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube, Sumter School District Board meetings, and Sumter School District's Facebook page. Vision. Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to reach their full potential. Mission. Sumter School District is committed to providing a safe, nurturing, and a high-quality educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success. Committee members, Bonnie Disney, me, Chairperson of the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, Sean Reagan, and Denise Jones. Subcommittee members, Dr. Oral Span, Sharon Teague, and Cherie Boozer. Staff members, Dr. William Wright, Superintendent, Dr. Jada McLeod, Executive Director of Academics, and Shantae Scott, Administrative Manager to the Superintendent and Board of Trustees. Good morning. We are so glad to have all of you present for our meeting. The meeting is now called to order. I'd like to first take a moment to have introductions. We have some members who may not know each other. And so if you'll go around the room and introduce yourself, we'll start over here.
Good morning. I'm Christine Barnes from K-5 Miller.
My name is Jada McLeod, Executive Director of Academics.
Sherman Boozer, retired educator. Denise Jones, school liaison for Shaw Air Force Base and appointed board member.
William Wright, proud superintendent of Sumter School District.
Bonnie Disney.
Sean Reagan, representative for Area 5 school board member.
And at the moment, Ms. Teague and Dr. Span are not present. This meeting is now called to order. I said that. With no objection, this agenda stands approved, and your agenda is in front of you. The purpose of today's meeting, good morning. I'm so glad you could be here with us. And Dr. Span, if you'll just briefly introduce yourself.
I'm Oral Span, retired South State University professor of school business. I operate nonprofit at this time in another area, working with small businesses and farmers.
Thank you. And just as an overall introduction, I would like for our meeting to be less formal than we may have at a regular evening board meeting, because there's going to be discussions and talk, and we need to feel free to do so without too much formality. Our purpose today is to perhaps discuss, perhaps evaluate, and study the pros and cons of instructional plans as they are in our district today. I often think about what Dr. Wright has said, that we're no longer a small district. We're no longer a middle-sized district. We are a large district. And sometimes the way we operated in the past may not fit our needs as a larger district. And when we went in February, Dr. Wright, we went to a teacher forum meeting, and they just opened up their hearts and their frustrations and their joys to us as board members when we attended in the afternoon. And one of the concerns that we heard, and I know Dr. Reagan would agree with this, they were concerned that some schools require lesson plans that really were very time-consuming. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but there was some concern among the teacher forum. Some said they were rather short, concise. I should use the word concise rather than short. and that they seemed to do the work very well for what was needed. And so we thought about it. I came and talked to Dr. Wright and Dr. McLeod, and she had I thought she had a brilliant idea. She said, I'll just start collecting lesson plans from every school in the district. And we'll talk about that later because that's part of our program. But that was a rather eye-opener. It still may be a good process, but we thought we would at least look at it, discuss it, have open discussions, and see where we go with that. In addition, Dr. McLeod wants us to look at the Sumter School District Academic Framework draft, and that might have something to do with instructional plans too. So we're putting those two together today. At this point, as I said, I would like for us to be more informal, and Dr. McLeod and those on your staff, we are going to call on you a great deal to talk to us, and if we have questions, you are a curriculum instruction assessment committee does not call the shots. We will look at it because we have to be responsible and know what is going on. We can't just close our eyes and pretend everything is absolutely perfect. And I'm sure it is, but our job is to make sure we are open and that we do know what is happening. So Dr. McLeod, y'all will be talking to us a great deal regarding our anything that we're talking about today. So why don't we go ahead now and start looking at the lesson plans. We did not run off a packet for each of you, but between you over here, if y'all will just take a moment so that you have ability to ask questions in a minute, take a moment and just look through the lesson plans that Dr. McLeod collected throughout the district and just scan them. And what I would do if I were you, take the packet, put it in half, cut it in half, and start scan it and then pass it to the other person. Dr. Wright, would you like anything? I have done my scanning.
Okay.
Dr. Span, do you have half of the packet? It should be a very large packet. And if you would, just scan it back and forth. Remember the days when you taught and how you would react to that. And Dr. McLeod, while they're just scanning, if you want to comment, or any of you, would you like to comment on what you observed as you were collecting them?
I did notice there's a wide variety in the lesson plan formats, as well as what they're being asked to do with those plans at the individual schools. And I would like to see more continuity across the schools. And I think one thing that we're noticing in the classrooms is the need for exemplars for the teachers to see what the level should be of the rigor when the students have completed.
Would you like to discuss that, because you had a special workshop recently for principals and assistant principals?
Yes, ma'am. We are beginning our process for our accreditation review, which is actually next year. However, we've started all that work this year, and Cognia is the review company, and they require us to gather a lot of data to ensure that we are meeting the requirements. And one way to gather that data is to use their observation tool, which is a student-centered observation tool. When you go into the classrooms, you are looking at what the students are doing, how they're engaging with the teacher and the content that they're learning. And in doing that, to ensure that we're all, the observations, we're all seeing the same things and looking for the same things. We have started the Elliott observation calibrations. So last week was the principals' days, and we actually went in as small groups to classrooms, and the observations are 20 minutes, and then we come out and we debrief on the observations and look at the scoring and what evidence there was to be able to have that score. This is not connected in any way to the teacher evaluation or the 4.0 rubric. There is a crosswalk to where you can see if you're getting this in with the Elliott, seeing the students doing these things, then yes, the teacher is doing the things that she or he needs to do for their evaluation also. It was very eye-opening for the administrators, and a lot of rich dialogue occurred with that. But we did see again with the planning and small groups, and at times the level of rigor was not where the standard indicates that it needs to be. We'll be doing that same training when we get back from spring break with both our assistant principals. They're part of the instructional leadership team, as well as our instructional coaches that are in the schools. So it's been very rich dialogue thus far, and we've been looking at a variety of things, but the planning seems to be key. It's very evident, looking at what the students are doing, how they're engaging, it's very evident where the planning time has occurred, and it's being specific to the student needs versus when it's just more surface than deep learning. And these new standards, such as excuse me, the science standards, where that's a whole paradigm shift to now teach from a phenomenon base, it requires a lot more application, creation. It's not, memorization anymore. You have to know your vocabulary and things like that, but you have to take that information and apply it to problems, real-world problems. And that's a shift for some teachers to do that. So there's ongoing training with those things, but looking at our data to be able to drive our instruction in our classrooms every day is where we're focusing, and that review of that data has to be specific to the students, what their needs are. So that requires planning.
All right, and planning would include instructional plans, wouldn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to ask each of our members, just ballparking these, Dr. Bouger, and we'll go around the table. What do you think about the lesson plans? Do you have any comments? Do you see the rigor in all the plans? Or what's your gut feeling if you were the superintendent? What would you say?
there is a section for assessment and independent practice. So I'm seeing all of those components throughout all of the lesson plans, I think except one, school where I noted that I do not see that, component in there.
I will just go around the table, but are you seeing some require a great deal more time than others?
I think it, I wanna be fair in
Yeah,
answering that
sure,
question.
absolutely.
Because it depends upon the teacher, what he or she puts into the lesson plan. And some of them definitely require those parts with the learning goal, the content presentation. But as I say, as I look throughout all of the lesson plans with the exception of one, all of them still have those required components where they're asking them to do it. So I don't see the inconsistency as much in terms of, unless I'm looking at it wrong.
No, we want you to just speak for what you see.
I see a lot of the same components throughout the lesson plan,
Sure.
throughout the school.
Ms. Jones?
I agree, and I was seeing the same things as well, and I think part of that, the reason you see a difference in the lesson plans, you have to consider the grade level and the subject content. Because not every subject content lends itself to, very descriptive, that all of the major components, I think, are in pretty much every reading lesson plan. My only concern would be, this is probably kind of off the wall, but, if a substitute teacher had to come in on short notice for the day and was given this lesson plan, would they know what to do so that that continuity of learning isn't disrupted just because the teacher isn't present that day? I think that would be my biggest concern. Um, if the lesson plan is well written and is easy to understand by a substitute, I think that would be a telltale sign of if it's an effective lesson plan at all.
Excuse me. I don't have a comment on that particular document that we were just given. However, piggybacking off of Ms. Jones concerning the substitutes, are teachers required at this very moment to give, I guess, sub-plans or have those submitted when they know that they're not going to be present in case of emergencies? That's still a practice.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is. And they also have emergency plans for 3 days is the minimum. And that's for if something happens like immediately that is available, and they usually keep those in the front office.
In reviewing these, there are some of them that don't have standards written out precisely, and I would agree with the statement that is made about those teachers, substitute teachers, and how they would, in any classroom, how they would follow this lesson plan. From my perspective, I thought, when I worked at the State Department of Education, I didn't really totally introduce myself. I taught in the public schools, and I worked in higher education, and of course I served about 9 years at the State Department of Education, working with children with disabilities as a state director for children with disabilities. We call it special ed or what have you. But I know that the state has enacted these kinds of structures for teachers to follow. And I see it here, but I don't really see it. And so maybe we need to look at that. I don't see what, and I've been gone a number of years, I will realize that, but I followed up on what we're supposed to be doing in the public schools. And I don't see that here, but I see the standard process in some of the standards. So what do we follow in this district?
Dr. Wright, would it be inappropriate to ask your opinion?
No, ma'am. I'll give it to you. A couple of things jump right out that I think are important. First of all, lesson plans, as they are currently conceived and constructed, while we have some format variations, some of it is simple as putting it on a page, a portrait as opposed to landscape. There are key components, obviously, that need to be in a lesson plan, but lesson plans should be designed, in my opinion, always to be or serve as a blueprint. It is not necessary, in my opinion, to script out every little thing that you're going to do in a classroom, but it should be clear to the person that is observing what is and is not covered in the lesson. Obviously, there should be standards alignment. There ought to be objectives. There ought to be, instructions about how to do. And for substitute teachers, that information has to be much plainer and clearer because of the variety of exposure, experience, education that that substitute teachers have. I myself started out as a substitute teacher, so I'm really clear on the fact that some lesson plans that I was given were very descriptive, and some required me to be innovative on the spot. I'll put it that way. So the more information we can provide for that, as a school leader, Ms. Disney, to be honest with you, when I was middle and high school principal, what I wanted to do when I went in and observed teachers and observed lesson plans is to see alignment between what was on the document and what was actually going on in the classroom. Because sometimes people that write really good lesson plans may or may not be able to deliver the lesson, and or vice versa. Sometimes you got people that, and so for me personally, what format we use, that's what I charge Dr. McLeod and her department with. I'm even not so big on, whether or not all 27 of our schools use the same document oriented in the same way. What is most important to me is that the blueprint is laid with the key components that have the lesson where it can be delivered appropriately based on what's here. And if I'm observing, I should be able to come in, pick up the document, and see for alignment, whether I'm doing it real time when the class is going on, or whether or not I'm doing it sporadically as a check. And then probably lastly, for right now anyway, Madam Vice Chair, or Madam Chair in this case, as time goes on and we get less and less of our teachers who are education majors, coming out as education majors, I also think that we're going to have to be very intentional about including even more lesson plan design. This is what should go in it. This is what should not go in it, because the further we get away from 4 years of preparation to be a teacher, the more that we're going to have to be intentional in school districts about making sure. And guess what, y'all? That means that we can't have 42-page lesson plans per lesson, because that never made sense to me anyway. But certainly in a case like this, a couple of pages front and back should be more than sufficient for each lesson, in my opinion. And I think that's what the teachers were saying, when we heard them talk about these excessive lesson plans. Don't see any examples here that are 42 pages long, but if there are, then we certainly need to and can do better than that, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a point that I don't think I said when I was talking. I know that sometimes we have to move a teacher from one elementary school to another, or a high school one to another, and to me it would seem a little less of a jolt to the teacher if they didn't have to learn a new format, which is a small matter perhaps, but we certainly want to keep our teachers, and to me, if the less, the happier they are and the less we pile on them, to me is very important in helping to keep teachers happy and want to stay with our district. Would you guys like to comment? Of course you do.
To Dr. Wright's point, there's a few things that I would like to see for the reason that we have teachers coming in from all walks of life now, and the support they need. One of the things that we are seeing is the level of rigor, what the standard is actually requiring the students to be able to master. And I feel we need to give them some support in what that actually looks like. They're not in the classrooms not having the rigor just, for no reason, but they haven't always had the opportunity to see where the level of rigor should be. So if we're including that, and we are no longer in the days of lecture 90 minutes with our student population, we have to ensure that they're engaged in the learning. So we would not undertake anything like this without having a teacher group to assist us with this, because we need their feedback there in the classrooms. But if we're looking at the teachers as a whole and the support they need, I would think it would be beneficial to look at something that has all the components, and then, whether they do it landscape or, portrait or those kinds of things, or they want to put their pretty school colors and all that kind of thing. I don't see a problem with that at all. But if you'll allow, I have a sample for elementary, because it is going to look different, elementary versus secondary, that we would start to work from. So I'll share that.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I guess just for clarification, are we looking to change the structure or format of the instructional plans? Is that an objective? Is that what we're trying to do? I don't know.
All right, our purpose as board members is to ask, but it did seem that based on what we heard at the teacher forum, and I believe you were there, and based upon what they told us, that this might be an issue.
We certainly don't see it at this very moment. We don't see that in the documents that were shared with us, though. And I
Right.
agree, there were some folks saying that there were 42 pages,
Right.
but that didn't show up today. So
Right.
are we looking to?
Well, based upon what they told us, you and I are not making the decision.
Certainly not.
The academic director, they're the ones looking at it. And I believe you've said you see areas you as the academic director may want to change. So they may want to change.
Okay.
Yep. Did I say that correctly? Dr. Span?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
The other thing I would like to suggest also is that you talk with or speak with those individuals at the college level that's teaching this process to the students that's coming into the district, along with those other programs that we're now having throughout, like what they call the Mister and all those programs, where teachers are coming from, to make sure that you're clear with what they're teaching.
That's a very good point.
Madam Chair, if I may say, right along those lines, Dr. Span, I am the parent of an educator in North Carolina who's going through teacher prep right now to get his license clear, like we have to do. And he told me one day, says, "Dad, I've got a 42-page lesson plan I've got to do." And I thought he was kidding. So there are organizations and schools of learning out there that, for whatever reason, are doing that, and I just see that as being counterproductive for the purposes of what we're doing. For one lesson, for 42 pages, where you're scripting out everything that you're doing, and children should sit in the chair this way and be, we want to get at the basics, and I think the development of these is simply to do minimum requirements for a successful lesson plan. Some people probably want to script it out a little bit more, and I think we'll leave room for that. But at a minimum, these things should be covered, is what I think we're trying to accomplish here with that. Yes, ma'am.
Another question,
Go ahead.
and it's to Dr. McLeod. I don't know if they're still the long range lesson plans that teachers have to do, which would have consist of probably 20-something pages. But are they required to do long range lesson plans, I guess, for the entire year? I know that was something that was done previously.
That's part of their process, but it's not, it shouldn't be 20 pages. It's more of their pacing for the year and their major standards or objectives.
Right.
And we provide most of what they would need for that process is provided for them. And all what they have to do is make it specific for the students in their classroom.
And that's a
looking at their
separate
data.
format as well? That's a separate format that you all provide, that you said?
We do.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions regarding what we've talked about, the instructional plans? Well, then where do we go from here? And I believe this is a good segue into the academic framework draft, isn't it? Don't you think that or I'm assuming that the lesson plan issue is somehow going to be tied in with the academic framework, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Across the district, some of our language is different, and there's a need that for us to all be using the same language and some of the same structures. So we have been working on the academic framework. We actually started this a couple of years ago, and then of course COVID kind of rocked our world, and it pushed it to the back burner for a little while we were online learning and those kinds of things. But we've been getting input on this, and it provides the purpose for it, what our core beliefs are, which are in line with our vision and mission, and it will actually also connect all of our content area frameworks and our MTSS framework, but to keep it from being, a 200-page document, we will link those in. But it talks about what are our measurement and our goals, what student work should look like, what assessments are, what the different types of assessments are. We still have some struggle with that, which goes back to how we're using the assessment information, the data, to drive instruction in the classrooms. Talks about the learning environment, what the expectations would be for the environment, and all of this is connected back to the Elliott observation for student learning and the 4.0 rubric for evaluation. So it also gives information about management, lesson designs, very basic information for that, And should we have a common type of planning, we would also link that in. It also talks about the pacing and materials to use, questioning. We're working on questioning to move that up from just depth of knowledge 1, which is pretty much memorization, to the higher level questioning, because the summative test, almost 100% is DOK 2 or 3. It's not just basic memorization anymore. So, and that was one of the reasons we pulled that out into the sample lesson plan, is the where it says question stems to help with that. And then what academic feedback should look like, the grouping of students, increasing the higher level problem solving, which is what the summative assessments require. And then resources that are available will be linked. You'll see that our observation tool is linked in there. So you can actually go directly to that. And some of the research is also indicated within it. But it would put us on the same page using the same language, because titles of things change in education fairly frequently. And when you have new people coming on board, that can be confusing if they don't have something to refer to assist them with that.
What I am seeing is your job is getting more and more complicated. We're talking about maybe relooking at instructional plans and then incorporating some of the teaching and learning, which it won't be a draft anymore, and then taking that with Elliott and increasing the rigor. Now, do you believe that we can modify the instructional plans to also incorporate what we're talking about now?
Yes, ma'am, and that's why the sample I gave you has the 4 levels to assist with the rigor. Yes, ma'am. No. It's on the other side.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
So, like, it would go back to providing, so they have examples or exemplars of what a level 4 should look like.
You know, I just scanned them. I think I would like it as a teacher. I don't think this is oppressive. I think this would be enlightening to me.
And then training the leadership at the schools. I think some of what you may be hearing is that some of the leadership are requiring more scripted lesson plan than others. But I feel we have to differentiate with our teachers just like we expect them to do with our students. Some teachers, if they're struggling in one area, such as questions, then as a school leader, I would sit with that person and assist them in developing their questions. And until they got comfortable with it, you know, have them write out their questions for their lessons. But I wouldn't require the whole school to do that.
Right. For example, with help, you would have to have training sessions on what that means.
Yes, ma'am.
And how to do that. Now, and you and I had discussed that we might need different instructional plans for, let's say, high school and even certain subjects in high school, for example, in
Absolutely.
band or art.
That's correct. They would still have, it would look different for subjects. However, it would have the same components within it. Because you have to have that standard and the indicators and exemplars of what the higher level looks like.
Well, let's have comments from other, Dr. Wright, if you were a principal, what would you think of this for elementary school?
Great. I think it's right where it needs to be. It gives enough information, but it doesn't require me to. I've always had a problem with teachers having to spend more time creating lesson plans after delivering the lesson. So I think it's enough, but it's not overwhelming.
Ms. Boozer, I know you were a principal. So what would you say if you were fifth grade, if you were an elementary teacher?
I would definitely have to spend a little bit more time.
Right, looking at it.
Looking at this.
Right.
And dissecting it and
Right.
seeing an individual lesson plan.
Right.
And definitely, receiving some training on it so that I can ensure that the teachers, when we push it out to the teachers, it's done with fidelity. In addition to that, I do agree with Dr. Wright. You know, we can spend a lot of time in lesson planning, but we also want to focus in on the implementation of it, because that oftentimes is where it falls apart. And then going back with differentiation of instruction for students, we also need to consider that for teachers. We have teachers coming in at different levels. We have some teachers that are coming in from very strong college programs that won't need a whole lot of support with lesson planning. But we do have some teachers that are coming in with other programs that didn't really have those foundational skills, and so they may need that support. And then also considering that you have teachers that may from international teachers and also teachers that are coming through the alternative route. So take that into consideration, that they may not have that pedagogy, and so will they really understand this specific lesson plan? So when you're considering that, think about the training that will need to be provided based on those different levels of teachers coming in.
And I have to ask, Dr. McLeod, did you look at other districts, or did y'all brainstorm this one, or did you maybe see something similar to this and find out how successful they were?
Actually, this is borrowed from another district, from a school that was a failing school last year and received an excellent rating this year. And speaking to that particular principal, who is willing to allow us to take a team to see what's going on in her school, very similar demographics and rural, like so many of our schools are. She's very willing to share, and that she was noting the same things that I've noted, that the rigor wasn't in the classrooms, and that's why she felt it was so important. And I agree, to have those levels so the teachers know where the students should be, what they need to be doing if they're going to score that highest level. But that's remarkable change to go from unsatisfactory to excellent in a school year.
I agree with you. I did work in that area. Dr. Spann, I'm just jumping around a little bit. What is your reaction to what you've just heard?
Everything that's been said is on point, but to add to that, and I think you brought that up, that we have to train or provide things to the teachers. And oftentimes, to interact or provide new processes, and teachers are dumbfounded. They're not going to do it because they don't understand it.
Ms. Jones? And then I'll get you.
The only question that comes to my mind is, I know we're getting to the technology and electronic age. Would these instructional plans be able for the teachers to complete them electronically on the Chromebooks and that kind of thing? And then the second part would be, have we addressed, parents' interest in this at all? So I know that sounds kind of odd, but some of our parents, I think, really want to be invested in what their children are being taught, and being able to provide something like this. This is the lesson plan that we have for the day or for the week or the subject, whatever it happens to be. And to get some parent input into, how they think their child would be able to be successful with this kind of format and this kind of instruction. I think they would be able to provide some input into that as well.
Absolutely. All stakeholders will have input, and with the framework before it's released as a final draft.
Actually, I don't have any.
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair, I have a question. May I ask?
Yes, please.
Dr. McConnell. Dr. McConnell, if this is expected to move forward with the process, and I know that you will provide training, what would that look like in terms of after that training takes place? What will the monitoring look like, in terms of the consistent support throughout the school? Do we make sure that the school that moves from unsatisfactory to excellent and consistent and ongoing support? So what would that process look like?
Part of that process will be in our monthly meetings with the principals. They're actually academic training meetings this year, and it's been at least monthly. And we've been working very hard with training on data, what the data means, how to use the data to drive the instruction in your school, and this would be part of that process. So we also train the instructional coaches, reading coaches that are in the schools, building their capacity. We're training them monthly to be able to provide support to the schools, because I have ELA here, elementary, K-12, math, science, social studies, PE, health, fine arts. He's sitting there. I have Kate, and I have ELA coordinator and the elementary math specialists are not here at this time, but that is the extent of our academics, content-focused personnel. So we have to build the capacity in the schools to help us with the in the weeds, day-to-day support. This is what support looks like for your teachers. This is what it doesn't look like, to be able to support the teachers and assist with the monitoring. That's going to be the leadership at the schools, and we're working also on the assistant principals. They've started the monthly trainings with them. Right now that's been more managerial type things, but we're adding the academics for them also, because they're your next building leaders, hopefully. So they'll receive training also.
I think that's going to be key, the ongoing support and ensuring that it's done with fidelity, and then really watching that data to ensure that it's impacting and that we're moving positive.
If you want to speak on segment two,
Yes, we're in the early stages of the formative assessment that will be district-wide, so that we can be able to use that information to guide the instruction daily, to determine what interventions need to occur with the students, because they've got to be specific to the skill gap. So, and we know that we have some with our students being, it's the fact that it's the aftermath of COVID, a lot of it. And we have, to be able to move them forward, we've got to be very intentional in our planning and our support for our students. And just as you said, with teachers coming from different starting points, different places, we've got to be able to have things in place to support them so that they are successful, so that we continue to grow them into teacher leaders and beyond. So you may hear some that aren't happy with common formative assessment right now. It's just, you know, that's a mind shift also. But the goal is to improve instruction, improve student outcomes.
Dr. McLeod, is the formative instruction MAP, or are we going with something different?
We use MAP, and that's going to give you where the students are ready to learn today, but we're also using common formative assessments that are grade level, content, standard specific to see where they're at with the content that they're learning in the classroom at the moment.
Or is the assessment something our district has created, or is it something that we are purchasing?
It's a combination right now that we're working to streamline. But again, we want administrator and teacher input on that before we finalize anything like that, so that they understand what and why and then the how.
Just for information for anybody who doesn't know, would you explain MAP? That's been around since 2000 at least.
Yes, ma'am, but I do have my math expert sitting beside me.
Oh, could you take just a moment to explain MAP? And I know it's an acronym.
Yes, ma'am. MAP is measures of academic progress, and we actually consider MAP to be a universal screener and an interim assessment. We do it 3 times a year, and as Dr. McLeod mentioned, it gives us data on the state standards, but it's more so of not based on what you were taught, but where you are, like your level, what you already know. So for the easiest example is to think about math like with fractions. So you take MAP in the beginning of the year, and MAP will tell you where the students are with fractions regardless of their grade level. So you could have a 4th grader scoring like a 2nd grader with fractions. And so now the teacher knows I have a gap to fill before I get to my instruction on fractions.
And that's part of the data, right?
That's the
Yes.
data that you
Yes.
get. You could also get that a 4th grader is scoring on 6th grade fractions, so now you know, well, they've mastered the content I'm responsible for. How am I going to continue to help them grow? So that's a quick example of, and we do that 3 times a year.
Yep.
And that is required by the state as well.
Oh, it is?
Well, it's required that we give an assessment
Right,
like that.
Right.
We have a list to choose from,
Right.
and we use MAP.
And it's
Yes.
used on the Chromebooks, isn't it?
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe even with COVID, they were given the MAP assessment. Yes, I had a granddaughter, and she would turn around to look at me and ask for answers, and I'd say, please don't, I don't want to go to jail.
Yes, NWEA was able to set up a remote testing
Yes,
experience during
remember.
COVID. Mhm.
Are there other questions regarding where we are leading? And if not, on our agenda, 4.1, it says steps moving forward. So I suppose you need to address that. And then what recommendations do we present to our Board of Trustees at the meeting? If you need to tell me that later, I suppose that's fine. But you have any ideas what the steps, I think you've been saying it all along, the steps forward, you're in the process.
Yes, ma'am. We're still receiving stakeholder feedback for both the teaching and learning framework, as well as we will be meeting with teacher groups and then stakeholder feedback for lesson plan development And as we update our curriculum, in our curriculum review this summer, that will be going on, ongoing, and putting some exemplars together. So there are, at the different grade spans, there's something that tangible that the teachers can see. This is what it would look like for fourth grade science, for example.
Do you think it's possible before the beginning of next school year, we might have an elementary instructional plan that, as we've been discussing, that could be in effect?
Yes, ma'am. We do have elementary focus groups going on right now in both the ELA and math, and that'll be part of what they're looking at to provide some consistency with the actual pieces of the lesson plan and the planning process.
So it would be appropriate for me to share that with the entire board,
Yes, ma'am.
and I'll get with you to get a statement. How do you think we are regarding middle school, high school? Any ideas on those, or do we leave them alone, or?
I would like our middle and high focus groups that are coming together to also look at a structure so that we ensure that all of them have the components in there, because high schools these days, like I mentioned, it's no longer lecture for 90 minutes. They see the need to have small groups, one-on-one. We don't call them centers in secondary. We call them stations. Those types of things. We really want to work on the student engagement at the secondary level, not the sit and get.
Are there any more questions?
I just have, may not be able to answer. I understand, I know that students have IEP, and I know that there are students that are included. And so how do you plan to work this process with those teachers that need to, that have those students that are included in regular care?
Well, we are moving to very collaborative relationship with the special needs teachers as well as the regular ed teachers, because one of our beliefs is that special needs students are regular ed students first. They're going to get what the regular ed students get with the support they need, but we're moving towards as much inclusion as possible. I know that is the goal of the student support department, and the special needs teachers are in the trainings with the regular ed to ensure, but then they're the ones that can also provide training on how to better support those students in the classroom when they're not in there with them. You know, we have different models where the special needs teacher may push into the regular ed classroom with the teacher, kind of a co-teaching model, but then we have others where it's more of a pull-out resource model. So the teacher isn't in there with them, but they're providing the strategies to best support those students.
Okay, because I've had teachers, and I know of programs where I've asked the question, are you being included into this process? And they haven't, even in terms of programs that this school district, and I'm speaking specifically about this school district, where those teachers weren't involved. And I've questioned it, and I've asked about, are you getting the same information? Are you being exposed to the same process? And they haven't been involved. So I'm glad to see or hear that you're going to include these teachers in this process.
Yeah, Ms. Davis and I have collaborated quite a bit on that this year, and there's been a big push towards that that the special needs teachers, they need the information that the regular ed teachers are getting also to be able to support the students. And whatever the regular ed students get, they are regular ed first. And then if they need special needs support, they get that. They're going to get everything that any other student sitting in the school would get, and the same resources, the same, we want them to have every experience any other student would have in the school, which is a shift from previous years.
Any other comments? All right, I'm going to comment and give a closing of, first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. Dr. Wright, you don't know how much I appreciate you sitting in on the curriculum assessment instruction. I do not think there's anything more important than knowing that we are offering and delivering the highest level of education that we can. And I believe that what has gone on this morning indicates that Sumter School District is on the path to making sure that any student coming to our schools will have complete academic achievement delivered, and that they will achieve. I certainly appreciate all of your input, and I am impressed with all of the questions being answered. And Dr. McLeod, you have done phenomenal work. When we first met and when we shared ideas and we went to Dr. Wright, I didn't know that this would come together so quickly or so well. I'm just a board member. But you have done the work, and the teachers, I do hope the teachers appreciate, and I think they will, the work that has gone into this. I would feel like this is very doable if I were a classroom teacher. But I'm a high school teacher. I was a high school teacher. That's a little different, and you're already on that. They have very definite ideas about how to do something, and I'm sure your groups are going to come together with solutions. But thank you so much for the work you've done, all of you. And
Well, thank you. I was going to say,
it's all of your office, I know.
it's a team effort
It's a team
at all
effort.
times.
But you did it, and there are so many things calling for your attention. I do appreciate all that. I also appreciate everybody who came today and wants to know what's happening in the world of academics. That's our highest priority. I love football, but what our kids learn and who they become is the most important thing. Normally, I said we would meet on a Wednesday. I happen to be out of town the first meeting. Is Wednesday still going to be good, a Wednesday morning, or do we need to keep it on a Thursday? Just give me a yes or no. Would it be okay? Would it be okay with you guys? All right. And we will check with Ms. Teague, but if not, then the next time we meet, which was supposed to be the first Wednesday of a month, and things that come up from the teacher forum, I consider are from TAC meetings. I consider legitimate. If something comes to mind with Dr. Wright or for you, we're here to make the best district we can. We're not here to slam anybody. So if that's all we have to say, I appreciate you coming, and let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are adjourned. Yeah, I'm going to give that to them, the lesson plans, because I don't think they do